So what is the solution to the problem of Spotify? We've been talking about it a lot on this channel. It's been something that's been raging in the music business for a while. And today I want to show you that there are strategies that we can utilize to get around Spotify. I am a firm believer that as an artist, we should not be solely relying on Spotify to generate income. And I think that's kind of one of the problems in our music business right now, is that there's a culture of artists who want there to be this dream scenario where they don't have to do anything business related. All they can do is focus on the music, and all the business stuff is taken care of, and the music coming in from Spotify is enough to pay their entire team and themselves enough for them to be millionaires, right? There's this conception of what it's going to be like to be a successful musician, and there's not a lot of look into what the actual strategies that people are using to generate revenue are. So today I want to give you 3 different ways that you could start to generate revenue in your music business outside of Spotify. And hopefully this will start to give you a bit of a Spotify solution to the problems you've been having with just earning income from your streams, okay? So the first method that I've seen a lot of artists do that can work for you is utilizing alternative streaming platforms. So if people say, Dax, I'm not going to use Spotify, I'm not going to put my music up on Spotify, I would say, okay, well, where are you going to put your music instead? So they would say things like Bandcamp. Okay, Bandcamp can be really cool because you can charge money for your music, and you can kind of pick the price. You pick the price, or sometimes you can have the fans determine what they want to pay. It's a really cool system. You could also sell merch through Bandcamp. So I get why someone would want to use Bandcamp. But what about the other streaming platforms? What about Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube Music? What about all these different platforms that have streaming services? Are you going to boycott all of them too? Or are you just going to boycott Spotify in particular? So if you do just want to boycott Spotify in particular, you just go to your distributor and you uncheck the Spotify box when you're picking the stores that you want to send your stuff out to. So it's a very simple, easy thing to do. But if you're going to take it off all streaming platforms, that's a whole other game. So I would just warn you that even if you choose to just uncheck the Spotify box, that's okay, but understand that now you are only operating on platforms that have lower market share than Spotify. So what does that mean, market share? What I mean is most of the people that have a streaming platform on their phone right now have Spotify. And then the second highest one, I believe, is Apple. And then I believe under that is Amazon. And then maybe YouTube is close to those two, but it's hard because YouTube has YouTube Premium, which bleeds into that a little bit. So it's kind of hard to discern YouTube numbers. But you get the idea. How big is the drop off? Well, last time I checked the numbers, which was a few years ago, to be honest, Spotify had well over 300 million users, including, they're free and everything. They had 300 million users on Spotify. And Apple Music, I believe, had like 15 to 30 million. That's the difference. We're talking about a 10x difference from the leader in streaming platform services, Spotify, to second place, right? So that's just the one thing I want to warn you of. If you're going to do strategy number 1, go to Bandcamp and everything, you have to understand that there's not a huge market share of people that are going to it. It's like sites like Reverb Nation. Those sites were built for musicians, not for fans consuming music. Fans don't typically consume music through those sites. Bands consume other bands' music, is what I found whenever I was on that site like 10 years ago. So just be aware of that strategy. You can promote it, right, through social media and still just drive people to Bandcamp, and it can still work, but just kind of be aware that you may get some resistance from people who are like, I don't have a Bandcamp, I don't even know what this is. Second point, the second strategy that we can use here is something called crowdfunding. Now, I have a good friend named Jess Eva Allen. She does this kind of stuff with artists all the time, and it's amazing that artists can actually build nice crowdfunding campaigns from people that they know, calling them out and just be like, hey, I'm crowdfunding to get funding for my first record, or for whatever your goal happens to be, right? Maybe it's your first 5,000, your first 10,000, and you do this, you call people up, hey, I've got a package here, I've got a package here, I got a package here, and it's a lot of, the downside to that strategy is there's a lot of selling, right? You got to call people up, you got to message people, and you got to sell these tiers and benefits of stuff that you have for your crowdfunding campaign. But, this can be a viable strategy for you to generate some income around your music for a release, for a song, And you're using it to also build a fan base at the same time. You could be using the storytelling of your message, or I'm sorry, not your message, your mission that you're trying to accomplish inside of your GoFundMe, your Kickstarter, your what's called Indiegogo, all those different crowdfunding sites. You can kind of use the messaging to attract new people as well that would potentially donate and become fans of you because they're on that mission that you're on as well. That's a really great way to connect with people. So crowdfunding can be really cool, but some artists don't really have the personality type for that. Well, I think it's a skill that everyone can learn. So if you do decide to do that, I recommend working with someone like Jess. She's really good at it. She'll give you the skills that you need to do it fast, right? But don't just, do this willy-nilly on your own, or else it could be, a lot of selling, a lot of frustration, and you don't know exactly the frameworks and the skills. So it's just something that a lot of people think they can just jump into. There's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of steps to do the crowdfunding method. So I now want to move on to my third and favorite way to do this, because as you could probably tell from my tone, I think the first two options are good, but I think the third option is great. And the third option is going direct to consumer. What does that mean? This means we are going to take our merchandise offers, our fan club offers, our music, whether it's vinyl or CD or USB pack or whatever. We're going to take all these things and we're going to sell them directly to the fans. Maybe through something like a website, or you could have little funnel software to build these offers out. I personally recommend softwares like Elite 360. They're very, very all-encompassing. There's a little bit of a tech barrier to entry. Not saying there's like code or anything. It's not that tech involved, but it's just a lot of stuff to do to set something up. So just kind of be aware if you decide to go down that rabbit hole. But the whole idea, though, is you don't need very much. The only things you really need are an email list and a Stripe account. That's fundamentally the main things that you need to do this third thing. And that's why I think every single artist can do this and can start generating more money around their music business than Spotify ever has for them, okay? I know some artists that will make $40 in 6 months from Spotify. Whoo! And even if we doubled our streaming rates, we're probably not getting to that level, right? We're probably not getting to the point of like one $10 sale of one offer versus, gosh, how many streams would that take on 0.0033 or 35 cents per stream? A lot. Okay, so the whole idea here is when you go direct to the fans, you can create content that's marketing to the fan directly. From that direct marketing to the fans, you can now push them down your funnel into the email list, where now you can communicate with them directly with no algorithm to kind of separate you. And you can start to communicate your story. You can start telling who you are, why they should care, and then you can start to present offers to them as well. And now you have a sort of streamlined process of taking fans from the social media level down into the email list level, down into making an offer, right? So the only downside to this approach is there's work involved, right? There's work involved to set up an email list, to set up an email sequence. But the beautiful thing about it is you only have to do it once. That's the cool thing about automation. You set it up one time and then it's automated. And it just does it over and over and over and over again for you, and it's hands off for you. So I think going direct to consumer, direct to the fans with your offers, your music, whatever it happens to be, is the best way to go. Now, here's something that I need to address. I almost named the video around this subject, which is, some of you know that I have a somewhat controversial opinion that as a musician, ironically enough, in today's age, music is not your core product anymore. Meaning, it's not the thing that fans are out there regularly buying from musicians. It's not your core product anymore. Music has become your marketing. And so, if you buy into the premise, as I've stated here, that music is your marketing, let's follow the logical conclusion of that. Spotify is a marketing platform. So, as I mentioned, they're the biggest leader in streaming, right? By a lot. So as music is your marketing, why would you not want to have it on the biggest marketing platform? Because here's the cool thing. You can have your cake and eat it too. Why do some artists feel the need that they can't, like, I can't have my music up on Spotify. I only have to do the Bandcamp thing. I only am going to do the crowdfund thing. I'm only going to do the direct-to-consumer thing. Well, you can do one or more of those things for sure, but still put your music up on Spotify. Now, why would you do that? Well, when anybody, I shouldn't say anybody, but when most people are going to look you up, there's probably two places they're going to do it at. They're either going to be on YouTube and look you up on YouTube, or they're going to be on Spotify and look you up on Spotify. Those are the most likely ways people are going to look you up. And a lot of times it's Spotify because it's just an app people click on their phone and they can look you up. And so if you're not on that service that over 300 million people have access to, you're limiting your reach by 300 million people voluntarily for no reason when you could just put your music out there for no additional charge. Remember, I said it's just a box that you check in your distributor's profile whenever you're creating a release. You just check the boxes of the stores you want to send it to. So it doesn't cost you anything to send it to Spotify. Why would we not send our music to Spotify, have the music be marketing where it needs to be marketing, but at the same time cultivate a fan base that we can do direct to consumer selling to? We could also maybe do a crowdfund campaign, which is kind of like a form of direct to consumer. If it's like we're going to the studio, we need to, you to help us raise money to go to the studio, something like that, right? And then you could also still have a Bandcamp, right? Maybe that's part of your direct to consumer strategy, is one of the ways that you sell your music is through Bandcamp, but you have merch available through other places. So I hope you guys understand the big point of this whole video is you can do both. You can do both. You can have the Bandcamp. You can have the crowdfund website. You can have your email list and your text list that you're selling offers through. But that doesn't mean you don't include Spotify. Include Spotify in the strategy. So while it's frustrating for a lot of artists out there, why doesn't Spotify pay us more? I'm like, well, because they would have to charge other people more money to consume the music they want to consume. And I'm telling you right now, I was even just talking to some family and I go, what if Spotify raised like their monthly rate to like $30, $40? They're like, oh, there's no way I'd pay that. There's no way I'd pay that. Think about that. If we're expecting to get paid more royalties, Spotify's got to make more money. Where are they going to get that money from? They're most likely going to get it by charging for subscriptions, and they have advertisers, right? So it's very, very hard to all of a sudden now start paying us more per stream for our royalties, when even if you did that, the difference that happens in the average artist's life, I would say, is relatively minimal. It just depends on what strata you're at. Like if you're in like the lower, you're in the beginning phases, you're starting out, you're trying to build this thing up. Yeah, it's not really going to make much of a difference. You're going to go from making $40 in 6 months to making $80 in 6 months. It's still not great, So that's a huge issue. Then you can look at it from like if you're like a mid-tier artist, you're making, let's say you have 100,000 monthly listeners. 50,000 monthly listeners, 200,000 monthly listeners, you're in that sort of zone, right? Then yeah, you're probably going to make a lot more money. People at the top are definitely going to make a lot more money. But people think that like, oh, if we figure out ways to pay artists more, then the average artist will be impacted beneficially from that. And what I would say is that even if we were able to have some big revolution at Spotify, I don't think it would make the difference that people think it would make. And ultimately, in that time that certain artists waste not having their music on Spotify available for people to consume that way, and just kind of wishing for the world to change, we could have been out there building up our email list. We could have been out there building out a crowdfunding campaign. We could have been out there driving people to other places like Apple Music, Amazon Music. We could have been building our Bandcamp out, things like that. So I think it's easy for us to get caught up in these black and whites of Spotify bad, everything else good, or Spotify good, everything else bad. I think the real logical way to go forward in this as an artist is to look at this like, I need to get my music out to as many people as possible. Spotify is clearly one of the best ways to do that. But that's not the best way to monetize my music. The best way to monetize my music is through the relationship and the selling that I do with my fans, right? I have to build a relationship through the music. They have to relate to me through the music. They have to relate to me in how I communicate to them in our emails about the music and about our story as artists. And then when we say, hey, we've got a new thing coming out, we got a new shirt, we got a new beanie, we got a new vinyl, we've got whatever's coming out, they're more likely to want to support you because you've actually got them to like you and communicate that story, as opposed to as soon as they join the email list, you're just like, buy something. And you're just constantly sending them emails asking them to buy stuff without really like trying to build that relationship between artist and fan. I think that's where a lot of artists are missing out, is they think email lists are just glorified social media posts, but now people can't escape because of the algorithm. It's like, no, don't just post what you would have posted on social media on your email list. Tell stories in your email list that really build a connection with your fan base, so that whenever you actually have a show, people want to come. You have a festival, people are like, oh, I'm going to go to that festival because they're on the festival. You have people that want to go to your live streams, that want to buy your merchandise, whatever it happens to be. That's all built through the relationship you build with your music. And so if you prevent your music from being consumed on one of the largest streaming platforms because we're getting kind of greedy, then I don't think that's a good strategy for it. I think the best thing to do would be say, okay, I'm going to put my music on the biggest streaming platform, and I'm going to go direct to consumer. I'm going to go to the, build the social media content that gets people into my world, get them into my email list through some different lead magnets and different offers that I can create to get people into the email list. And then you can start communicating and building that relationship. And that is going to yield, I guarantee, people overestimate what can happen in a year, but they underestimate what can happen in 5 years, 10 years. That's a loose Tony Robbins quote. And it's very true, because this strategy I'm telling you about, if you start implementing, you will not be a bazillionaire in a year. It's not going to happen, right? But if you give yourself time over a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you're consistent and you build this foundation that gets exponentially bigger and bigger, I guarantee you in 2 to 3 years, your music business will be night and day from where it is now. It'll be completely ahead of where it is, because you'll have built the foundations of just business, generally speaking. I'm not talking about fleeting trends in the music marketing guru space. I'm talking about the entrepreneurial foundations that have existed through businesses for hundreds of years, right? And a huge part of that is the lead generation that's getting people into your world and to be aware of you and like you. And then there's the core product that you have that everyone goes through. And I think it's something that artists don't think about a lot, because they think of business as like a 4-letter word. They think of it as something that's, oh, it's dirty to think about your business and your music. Those things are not supposed to intertwine. I think they're supposed to be intertwined if you're going to be a professional musician. If you're just going to be a hobbyist musician that creates art at home and you don't care about getting it out to the world really, and it's just sort of a fun thing you do, then you go do you. That's awesome, boo. But when it comes down to a professional musician who's like, the end goal is to make this my livelihood, then you absolutely have to look at this as a business. That doesn't mean you devalue your music and your art to just a simple commodity. Whenever you create your art, you create it with all the passion in the world, right? It's now the question of, what do I do now that I've got this piece of art? How can I get it in front of as many people as possible? And how do I get them to care? People think, well, the music is self-evident. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised what the simple aspect of storytelling is. Some people may have heard this story, but I had a friend of my family friend who was like, Dax, have you heard the new Gwen Stefani song called Purple Irises? And I was like, no, Robin, I'm a rock fan. Clearly, I haven't listened to her. But she was like, listen, when I first heard it, this is like just on the radio, no pre-framing about the story or anything. She was like, I just thought it was meh. I thought it was okay. I thought it was meh. She's like, but then I watched this E! documentary. She likes to watch E! News or whatever. And she's like, I watched this documentary about it. She was telling the story about why she wrote the song and how it's about a metaphor for her love for Blake Shelton and blah, 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 blah. By the end of the story, now when she listens to it, she loves the song. Why? It's the same song it was when she heard it when she went, meh. What was the difference between meh, or, oh my gosh, I love this song? What was the difference? It was the story. It was the way that song was communicated to the person. And so the people that like to think that the music will speak for itself, I'm sorry to tell you that it will probably not, you know? And so it takes a certain messaging, it takes a certain communication and presentation to get people to care about your music. And if you start to think about those things and take those things seriously, I guarantee if you keep doing this for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to build a music business that is a rock solid foundation of like income and fans, as opposed to the artists that are chasing the newest thing. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, there's playlists. Oh, there's this America's Next Top Hit Maker where I get to work with Busta Rhymes potentially if I win. And like, people are distracted by the newest thing that's going to make them a star, as opposed to focusing on the entrepreneurial foundations that are going to build them a business that's going to last them a career and build them a livelihood. So I hope you guys got a lot of value from this video, and hopefully see the solution to Spotify is to not view Spotify as your only income source, is to diversify your income source and start to work at building that connection with your dream audience and figuring out what exactly you can offer them so that they would actually want to support you. And you focus on that, I guarantee you're going to have a lot better music business than most. So I appreciate you guys watching this video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button, notification bell, all that kind of good YouTube-y stuff. It really helps out the channel. If you want some one-on-one help with your music business, we do have a link to apply for a free coaching call inside of that link. That's only for artists who are serious about leveling up their music business. So if that's you and you're interested, go ahead and click it. If not, no worries, all love, and I can't wait to see you guys on the next video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.